Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about development process. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, how do you go about the initial requirements gathering and feasibility analysis phase of a project? I feel they are vital to a successful project. Without it, your wiggle room as a developer becomes smaller and smaller as the development progresses. Would love to know your thoughts. Thanks. So, it's a good question, and I can only give you there's many ways to there are so many development processes. There's so many ways to do this. I'll give you the one that usually works best for me, and it's the one that I've seen to be. It's been fairly popularized in all this, at least the more successful projects that I've been part of. And basically, it's the MVP pattern in a sense, minimum viable product. What I will tell you is that I'm not trying to sell you on MVP. I'm just trying to sell you on a mindset, if that makes sense, because I truly believe that there is no blueprint for how to like a silver bullet type of thing that is going to work for all situations with all customers, because every customer is different. If your stakeholder is like a small little pizzeria, all they really want is you to just take in all the requirements and say, hey, here is some money, do everything and make us happy. And in a large corporation, they want a million meetings in small iterations and delivery cycles and milestones, and there's so many ways. There's so much stuff. So I'll just give you hopefully the mindset. So the first thing you need to do, and this is step one, I would argue, for every single thing you could possibly want to deliver, regardless of if you're a software engineer at Google or if you're a software engineer as a freelancer. Start with the specification, gathering the requirements. Have your stakeholder walk you through the deliverable. In other words, if it's a big super project, or if it's a small feature or whatever, that is the first thing. They need to be able to explain to you, or rather to prove that they can explain to you all the things about everything. And this is where it very quickly goes from depending on your stakeholder, because this is a very educational experience, and this actually works in a this is what I think is so beautiful about the whole thing, because it's an organic learning opportunity for the stakeholder as well. If your stakeholder is this 20-something PO who has no fucking clue about anything, they will learn how to structure stories by just doing this, because what they will usually do is that they will, and it's the same thing for non-technical stakeholders or people who are just customers, they will come with you with this big idea, and it's perfectly clear to them in their head, but the moment they need to try to explain it, they will start to realize that, damn, we've been in this meeting for 4 hours and we're still not even through half the stuff that I want to have said. And they will start to realize that, yeah, we probably have to split this up a little bit. So let's start with like a vision meeting, and this is why I tell developers, just get used to being in meetings, guys. Just learn to do it, because you have to, unless somebody else does it for you, which is very nice. But in many cases you have to be there, because otherwise you won't be able to estimate the work. And then you will go through many meetings until you finally get down to a specification of some sort. Now, always, in my opinion, use mock-ups for this, visual aids at all times, because when you get the visual aids and all the mock-ups, and it can be the stakeholder, him or her, they can make the mock-ups. It doesn't have to be a designer. It can be like stick figures and boxes, doesn't matter. Then the second phase of this whole setting requirements is going to happen, and this is where you come in, where this is where the true senior developers make themselves seen, because they will have good questions. They will have very relevant and good questions, and the better their questions, the more clear the specification is going to be. And this process continues until that you feel that you have a fairly clear understanding of what needs to be done. And this can take 20 minutes if it's a small thing, and it can take several weeks depending on how, like, what is the scope of the thing you're going to do. Anywho, once you are have arrived at some type of initial specification, you feel like you sort of know what's going to be built, you create a proof of concept. Now, a proof of concept is not an MVP. Or rather, I'm trying to make a distinction here. The proof of concept should be the cheapest thing. Now I'm just assuming that there's not an existing system or anything like that. If the proof of concept is just really relevant if you're starting from scratch. And that should be the cheapest damn thing that you can possibly make. I've even made videos, and I've made a video where I used Redux Persist to kind of showcase something that I did that I was very happy with, where basically we had this application that was going to be built, and we realized that, I kind of knew, because I've gone through the pain of building an entire fucking microservices super system and then having it be the wrong thing. So I told my coworker when we were building this, we'll just build the UI. Like, it was a completely pure front-end application with Redux Persist, so it just faked everything. There was no database, there was no back-end system, there was nothing. It's just a React app with Redux, and that turned out to be exactly the right amount of work that we needed to invest, because the product never got further than that first proof of concept. So what I'm basically saying is that in order for you, because fundamentally you have to understand that the process of gathering requirements is flawed. You're not going to be able to do it without building something, then reevaluating, and then continuing that process. You will never get it right, ever. That's why waterfall, as an example, has become this kind of byword for shitty quality software. It's not necessarily true, but it's one of the main reasons, because the more stuff you have to evaluate and the less information you have by getting your hands dirty and actually doing some coding, the harder it is for you to foresee all the different misses in the specification and all the corner cases and like all this stuff. So by just building a proof of concept, something that is very cheap, something that just kind of gets the idea across, is this sort of the thing that you want, and then presenting that to your stakeholder, they have something to play around with, and all of a sudden they're going to realize, oh damn, I forgot about A, B, and C. We need A, B, and C. Oh my god, we can't go without A, B, and C. And then you have more, and then you go back to step 1 and you iterate again, and you do this over and over until you can no longer fake the thing that needs to happen. That's what I like to say. Fake it all the way until you can no longer take the next meaningful step without actually, say, if it's a UI, like a full stack thing, until you have to build basically the whole system. And ideally, when you're making this, remember, like, the proof of concept should be turned in to a version 1.0. Something that is actually useful. So if you're like hacking things together and making a lot of ugly shitty stuff, well, then your first try at making the actual MVP, the thing that's actually going to be shipped, it's going to take a lot longer. I mean, it's not going to be as long as the first time, but I mean, hopefully you can understand that proof of concept does not mean shoddy thing. Make the thing that you're faking, quote unquote, as good as possible. My example is, I think, the best one. You build a full-fledged UI, and you simply stub off the database or like the back-end logic or whatever, like, so you just can like go in and click around and like use the thing, and then when it's still like it's the same thing you would have built if you started building the whole system immediately, but you saved yourself some time, and then you continue this until you actually arrive at the version 1.0. This works extremely well. It's never failed me, actually. The only time it's failed is when people, as I like to say, when people think that MVP or building something useful is the same thing as building something shitty. Then this does not work. But then again, waterfall would not work either if you build something shitty. So what I want you to take away from this is that delivering software is extremely hard. It's extremely frustrating and takes a lot of time and a lot of conversations and a lot of patience to get to working software. And for you to make that journey as nice as humanly possible, the best way for you to approach it is by starting out the whole conversation with your stakeholder by having them explain to you what it is that they want. But by just doing and asking relevant questions, how everything's going to work from these buttons to is it going to be responsive, is it not going to be responsive, etc., etc. And you continue that conversation until you feel like, yeah, I have a pretty clear picture of what needs to be delivered. And then you build a proof of concept, something very cheap, very small, that ideally just is the most basic thing you can imagine. It might not even be the finished thing, just something that they can try out. And when you have confirmation after they have tried it out, and it's unlikely that they're going to try it and not realize new things, then, and only then, you start to adding the actual real business logic and doing, like, starting to wire up the thing to make it the thing that they actually want. This works extremely well. Summary: fake everything until you can no longer go forward without building the real thing, and only ever build as much as is needed for the next step. Have a great day.